Picture this. It's a Friday night and you rush home from school as fast as you can because you know that Friday night equals film night, which means you're allowed to stay up later than your normal bedtime because the next day is the weekend. So you just come home from school and you throw your book bag down as quick as you can. You go find your parents and you drag them out the door and walk into those shops. You're told you can put a few bags of sweets in the basket. Now, I don't know about you, but the one thing that I always had to choose was Hubba Bubba. Not like the standard stick ones. I'm talking like the circular roll ones. I think they'll call it Hubba Bubba tape or something like that. I'll see if I can find a picture and I'll put it on the screen just to show you what I mean. And you'll either be like, hell yeah, or you'll be like, Chris, that's a little strange. They'd have the blue flavor, which was like blue raspberry or something. And then they'd have strawberry, which was usually my go-to. And then any other flavor that came out, I had to try it. My parents, of course, would get more sensible options, like popcorn or something for everybody to share. And then we'd head down and we'd go straight to Blockbusters. Now, for anybody that doesn't know what Blockbusters is, it's basically like a library. So instead of renting out book, you rent out a DVD. We would always pick out 3 films.
Blockbuster, bringing entertainment home.
One for us all to watch together, one for them to watch, and one for me to watch. We'd then go home and we'd order takeaway. Sometimes it'd be like your standard takeaway, you know, the ones with like little cup drinks and the red straws. Or if they were feeling extra generous, we'd order something like Domino's. And then we'd sit down, stuff our faces, and put a film on. Now, you may not have done this. You may not have done anything even similar to this, but it's more than likely that you can relate to having some sort of bedtime when you were younger, and then you'd stay up a little bit later, like on the weekends or on the Friday, because you didn't have school. And maybe on those school days when you didn't want to go to bed, you were caught like under your duvet with like a torch and a book, or like your Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Color was underneath your pillow, and you like got it out and started playing it, and then as soon as you heard a floorboard creak, you'd like put it back under the pillow because you didn't want them to know you were awake, so you had to pretend you were like asleep. Maybe as a teenager you were similar to me. You loved playing online games like COD or Halo or RuneScape or Animal Crossing, or maybe you just wanted to talk to your friends all night on your iPod Touch or like on MSN or something. The biggest thing that stands out for me when we were children and when we were teenagers is the fact that we didn't want to go to bed, because we felt like we were missing out on something. And honestly, you might still feel like that now, especially if you had any constraints like I did when I was young. This is no joke. At 9:30 every night, whether it was a weekend or a weekday, the internet would be turned off at 9:30. Like, that was the time. After 9:30, I couldn't get access to the internet. And back then, there was like no mobile data, or if there was, it was like super expensive. So all people cared about was calls and texts and not really the internet at the time. So sometimes even I have to remind myself that the thing that I'm doing will still be there the next day. From a young age, we've associated the weekend as something to look forward to, which means people are trying to speed run through their Monday to Friday to get to the enjoyment of their week and not have to go to bed at what I would call, as a teenager, a boring time. This filters from our childhood. When we were at school, we usually had to be at school for like 8:45 or 9 a.m. And then the same for our teenage life. We had to be at school or college. And then in our adult life, the most normal kind of hours are usually 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, don't work weekends. So to us, this just kind of seems normal. This is our normal way of living. Instead of following in a lot of our older generation's footsteps, a lot of us now are pushing more towards the approach of I work to live and not the I live to work mantra. There's been such an uprising now with Gen Z to actually do what we want to do and get paid for it. Not just to get a pay slip from a job that we don't care about, with people we don't care about, and then come home and watch TV and rinse and repeat. What I think we're trying to do is put enjoyment and work together, which admittedly is a little difficult and also not always possible. Not everybody is going to be in them circumstances where they can always go for a job that they're going to enjoy. Sometimes you're forced into other situations that you can't control and you need to provide for yourself or your family, or maybe even both. And I understand that. But what I will say is that I hope if you are pushed into that situation, that it's just for a season or two, and then eventually you'll be able to get out of it and do something that you might enjoy and actually feel worthwhile working towards, rather than living a work life that you don't care about. We spend so much of our time working. It only makes sense so that we're not sad and miserable and just having a low mood, that we do something that we actually want to do. It just makes sense to me. But like I said, I know that sometimes it's not a choice. I have a friend who once said to me that when choosing a job, he chooses one he doesn't particularly care about, which at the time sounded completely foreign to me. That had never popped into my mind. I knew that when I was going to find my next job, it was going to be something I at least wanted to try and probably going to enjoy. He went on to tell me this is because he doesn't want to take the work stress and the work politics and the work relationships back home with him, which I then understood a little bit more. However, I would still personally, if I could, choose a job that I do care about, and if I take it home with me, that's my problem. There's that saying that we're always going to have problems, so why don't we choose the problems that we're going to have? And that to me just seems like a problem worth having. I would rather choose a job that I care about and bring it home and then try and figure out how I can separate the two. It's important to acknowledge that we now have this freedom of choice because of our grandparents and because of our parents. And they've done this so that we can turn things around for future generations. It doesn't have to be as grueling anymore. We have so many other options, which of course can also be a bad thing, having too many options, right? But personally, I would rather have the option than not have the option. I was listening to Cal Newport's episode of Modern Wisdom the other day, and he was saying, when you think about it, it's only in the last 100 years that people have worked all day long as hard as they could. And this is when they first opened up factories and mills. And because of how unnatural this was and how much it took a toll on us as humans, we invented the labor union just to make it a little bit more bearable. When you look at work before that, around the agrarian times, the way we worked was attuned to nature. The seasons was our only boss. We followed things like whether it rained or not, so that we could grow our crops, so that we could grow wheat, barley, turnips, and clover. This is how we survived. A couple of days ago, I watched a video that inspired me to finish writing this one. And this was Hamza's video on the 3 types of masculinity: traditional masculinity, modern masculinity, and next-gen masculinity. Now, if you want to go watch this video, the link is in the description, because I'm about to simplify and round up what he said briefly in the next bit. I know that in this video, I'm not focusing predominantly on males, and I'm focusing on the generation as a whole. But the parallels are similar in terms of what we're reaching for, which is balance. The balance between working like a mule and being too carefree. And in general, I think this is what we're all trying to achieve in life, specifically the work-life balance. Enough to have a life to yourself, to develop your relationship with your friends and your family and your partner, but also enough to work and provide and survive. Enough to play and to study. Enough to eat healthy and have a good diet and not have a negative relationship with food. And the list goes on. So honestly, I think despite how some people may think, Gen Z seem to be trying to do it right.